Hello friends, welcome to the tutorial video for the gorgeous Playtime Shawl. Now, this is not a full-on pattern tutorial. This is a tutorial for each of the stitches in the Playtime Shawl. And what we're actually going to make is this crazy looking swatch, but it goes through each and every one of those stitches that you're going to do in the shawl. In the video, we're going to go through each of the different sections, starting with the textured section, which is right here. And in this section, you're going to measure your gauge swatch. We're also going to work on the crisscross sections right here. And there's two different crisscrosses to the front and crisscrosses to the back, and we'll go through both of those. We're also going to talk about this center crisscross increase right there. We're going to discuss how to carry your yarn. If you look on this edge here, this is where I carried my yarn, and there's no like long loops or anything. So I'll show you my technique for carrying that yarn up. And finally, we will go through the bobbles. When you make your swatch, make sure you're making it in the same yarn that you're going to be using for the Playtime Shawl. The only reason that I didn't make mine in the same color is because I had finished the shawl first and then didn't have enough yarn to do the swatch. Now, especially if you're making the larger size, you're going to need to take out your swatch at a later time to finish the shawl. You can go ahead and finish the swatch and cut it, but just hang on to it just in case you need it later on. Grab your yarn and your hook and let's get started. To begin, make a slip knot and chain 23. Half double crochet in the third chain from the hook and every chain after that. At the end of the row, you should have 21 half double crochets. Now we're going to start working the textured section of the shawl. This is really easy. On the right side, you're going to do half double crochets through the back loop, and on the wrong side, you're just going to do half double crochets. Go ahead and chain 2 and turn around, and this is going to be our right side. So this whole row, I'm going to work through the back loop. This chain 2 does not count as a stitch, so I'm going to be starting in this very first one. Yarn over, go into the back loop of that very first stitch, make a half double crochet, and then we're just going to half double crochet in the back loop all the way across. The next row of the textured section is just a plain half double crochet row. So go ahead and chain 2, turn around. This does not count as a stitch, so we'll go right into that very first stitch, and we're just going to do regular half double crochets all the way across. Okay, let's look at our swatch from the right side for just a minute. So this is part of the textured section of the shawl. You can already see that ridge that was created by working through the back loop. So we're going to do more of this in just a moment, and that part later is going to act as our gauge swatch. But right now we're going to dive right into the crisscross section. The next section that we're working is called the crisscross section, and it is so much fun. In the shawl, you're going to be working crisscrosses in one direction on the right side of the shawl, and in the other direction on the left side of the shawl. And the way we're going to recreate that in the swatch is we're going to work a whole row of crisscrosses to the back, then we'll work another textured section, then we'll do a whole row of crisscrosses to the front so that you can experience both of those crisscrosses. Now these crisscrosses are made up of double trebles, and double trebles are abbreviated DTR. And they're also made up of triple trebles. Triple trebles are abbreviated TRTR. So I'm back to where I was working that regular half double crochet row on the wrong side, and I'm going to go ahead and chain to get started for my crisscross row. To start the crisscross row, we're going to chain 5. Go ahead and turn around. This chain 5 is going to count as one double treble, which means we're not going to go into this first stitch because this is that stitch. So in the very second stitch, we're going to work one double treble. Now a double treble is really easy. You just start with 3 yarn overs. Then we're going to go into our designated stitch, which is right here. and pull up a loop. You should have 5 loops on your hook. Now we're just going to yarn over and pull through 2 until we're back to 1 loop. Next, we're going to start working our crisscrosses. We're going to have 3 crisscrosses across this row. Each crisscross takes up 6 stitches, and the crisscrosses are made up of triple trebles. So for a triple treble, we're going to start with yarn over 4. And then we're actually going to skip 3 stitches. And we're going to crochet or pull up a loop here in that 4th one. And you should have 6 stitches on your needle. Now, just like before, we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 until 1 loop remains. All right, that's our first triple treble. I'm going to work 2 more triple trebles in the next 2 stitches. These skip stitches we're going to come back to in just a moment. So yarn over 4. Pull up a loop in that next stitch. You should have 6 loops, and then yarn over, pull through 2 until 1 stitch remains. One more time. That is the first half of our crisscross. For our first crisscross row, we're going to work crisscrosses to the back. And just like you might have guessed, that means we're going to go behind these triple trebles that we already created. So in order to do that, you're going to push them down to the front, and then you can kind of hold them down with your thumb. You're just going to ignore them like they're not even there. And that leaves you free to access these skip stitches here. We're going to work a triple treble in each one of these 3 skipped stitches. Yarn over 4. Now working behind these stitches, push them down and out of the way. Go to your first skip stitch and pull up a loop. Then yarn over, pull through 2 until just 1 stitch remains. After you work that first one, these other 2 are a little bit easier to get to. So work your triple treble in each of the other 2 skip stitches. Now we're just going to repeat that crisscross to the back 2 more times across this row. So just to review it, skip 3 stitches, work a triple treble in each of the next 3 stitches, then going behind those worked triple trebles, work 3 more triple trebles in the skipped stitches. I'll show you one more time. After you finish those 3 crisscrosses to the back, you should still have 1 half double crochet remaining. We're going to work a double treble into that stitch. So yarn over 3, pull up a loop, and yarn over pull through 2 until 1 stitch remains. The row after this crisscross row is just a plain half double crochet row, but we do need to remember something very important. At the beginning of that last row, we worked a chain, and that chain counted as 1 stitch. So we have to make sure we go into the top of that chain 5 on our way back across. Chain 2, turn around. The chain 2 never counts as a stitch, so we're going to start in that first one here, and we're just going to work half double crochets all the way across. As you approach the end of the row, don't forget that you must work in this chain here. See how we skipped a stitch right down there? That's because this right here is our stitch. So I've actually got 2 more stitches left. I've got this one, a very obvious stitch that belongs to my double treble here. So I'm going to go ahead and work a half double crochet in that one. But then I still need to work in this turning chain. So I'm going to go ahead and yarn over, and then I like to get the very back of the stitch and this part of the turning chain here. Okay, so now we're gonna work a much larger texture section. This section is what we're gonna use to measure our gauge. So it's very important that you do all 6 rows of this section. The texture section is really simple. It's just a right side row of working half double crochets through the back loop, and a wrong side row of working regular half double crochets. So we're gonna work 6 rows of the texture pattern. Chain 2 and turn around, and we're back here on the right side. I can see my little ridge, and we're just going to work half double crochets through the back loop. So these 2 chains do not count as a stitch, so we're going to start with the very first one. Work half double crochets into the back loop all the way across. Before I turn around to work my wrong side row, I'm actually going to mark my right side row. I'm going to use a hot pink light bulb stitch marker, and I'm just going to put it right through this ridge right here. This is going to help me remember that whenever I am working a right side row, when I can see this marker, that I need to be working through the back loop. All right, now let's do that wrong side row. Chain 2, turn. This is just a regular half double crochet row, starting in that first stitch, half double crochet all the way across. Then you're just going to repeat those 2 rows 2 more times for a total of 6 rows of our texture pattern. After those 6 rows of the texture section, you should have 3 nice ridges here. So let's pause and let's go ahead and take our gauge. We're looking for 18 stitches over 4 inches. So I have my gauge swatch here, and whatever I get is going to determine what hook size I would use next. So I'm going to go ahead and place these 4 inches. Well, first of all, let me kind of work my swatch a little bit, because we know that when we're actually wearing something, it does stretch. And of course, this is a pre-blocked gauge. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set it up, not on the very edge, because I don't want to count those stitches. They're a little wonky, but right about here. And then that gets me pretty close to the edge here. So let's count and see what I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So my gauge with the hook that I'm using and this yarn actually is a little bit small. I have too many stitches in that 4 inches. And of course I would measure it several times. So for the rest of my swatch, I might want to consider going up a hook size. And when I work this texture section again, seeing if things change. And in the end, I'm going to pick whatever is closest to those 18 stitches over 4 inches. So now let's move into working that crisscross section to the front this time. It's very similar to the crisscross to the back, except that we're going to work in the front of our stitches. Begin with chain 5, turn around, and let's get started. So this first chain 5 is going to count as a double treble. So we're not going to work into the first stitch here. In the next stitch, we're going to work a double treble. Yarn over 3, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 until 1 stitch remains. Now we're going to start our crisscrosses, and it starts out exactly the same as crisscross to the back. We're going to skip 3 stitches, and then we're going to work 3 triple trebles in the next 3 stitches. Yarn over 4, skip 3 stitches, in that next stitch, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2 until just 1 stitch remains. Go ahead and work 2 more triple trebles in the next 2 stitches. Since this crisscross section is going to the front, we're going to be working in the front of these stitches. So that means these guys need to be pushed off into the back. So kind of fold them down so they're out of the way. And then we're going to be working in these 3 skipped stitches here. Yarn over 4, working in the front of these stitches. Go into that first skip stitch and pull up a loop. And then yarn over, pull through 2 until 1 stitch remains. Once you've done that first one, again, it's a lot easier to get into those other stitches. Work your triple trebles into the other 2 skipped stitches. All right, so you can see that our first row was going one direction, and now our crisscrosses to the front are in the opposite direction. So I'm just going to go ahead and work 2 more of those crisscross sections, and I'll meet you at the end. After you finish those 3 crisscrosses, there should still be 1 half double crochet remaining, and we're going to work a double treble in that stitch. So yarn over 3, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 until 1 stitch remains. Now we're going to work the return half double crochet row of the crisscross section, making sure when we go across that we remember our last stitch is in this chain 5 turning chain. So go ahead, chain 2, turn around, and then half double crochet in the first stitch, and every stitch across, making sure to get that very last stitch, the turning chain. Now we still have a few more techniques to try out. So next we're going to do another plain textured section. This is a really good time to try out a new hook if the first texture section was not meeting gauge. If you already met gauge, then you only need to do 2 rows of that textured section. So just 1 pass with half double crochet through the back loop, and then another pass with half double crochet, just regular. If you need to try out a new hook, go ahead and work a full 6 rows of that textured section so that you can re-measure your gauge. On the next right side row, we're going to learn 2 new techniques, as well as 2 techniques that we have already learned in this swatch. One of the new techniques is carrying your yarn. If you're using hand-dyed yarn, you really should be alternating your 2 skeins every 2 rows. And I'll show you how to carry that yarn up so you don't have long loops on the side. The other technique is our center crisscross increase. So the way that we're going to work this next right side row is we're going to join in our yarn, and I'm actually going to use a different color. This is my original color for the shawl. That way you can really see how I'm changing my yarns. The other technique we're going to do is a center increase, and we're going to put it in the center of our swatch. So on the other 2 sides of that, we're actually going to work the crisscrosses like they are in the shawl. We're going to work 1 crisscross to the back first, then we'll do our center increase, and then we'll work a crisscross to the front after that to make it most like the shawl. So first let's talk about alternating your skeins. So this would be skein number 1, the one that I have already been using for my shawl. This is going to be skein number 2. Now in your shawl, they would of course be the same colors, but you will have 2 skeins. And if they're hand dyed, you should be alternating them. So let me show you how I join in the second skein and then how I bring that color up with me. The next row that I'm working is going to be a crisscross row. So I know that when I start this row, I need to chain 5, but I'm going to go back for just a second to the end of this row, and I'm going to take out that last half double crochet. I like to join in my new skein of yarn on the very last stitch of the row previous. So let me go ahead and start that half double crochet, and before I get to the end, I'm going to join in my new yarn. So I'm going to take it and just loop it over the hook and pull it through to complete that last half double crochet. Now I know that the next step is to chain 5 to start my crisscross row, but if I chain 5 with my newly joined in color, then my old color would be stuck way down here. So what I'm actually going to do is chain with both of these skeins held together. So go ahead and pick up both strands of yarn. When you're working the shawl, you have to be really careful to remember which ball is skein number 1 and which one is number 2. But here I know that the blue is what I was already working and the pink is my new color. Holding them together, let's go ahead and work your chain 5 for the next row. Keep it really, really loose. Turn around. Perfect. So now I can just let go of the old skein, and I'm going to start using the new skein as I work this crisscross row. Just like we started all of our other crisscross rows, I've already got 5 chains here, and that counts as the first stitch. So I'm going to work a double treble in the next stitch and 2 more stitches after that. Once you've worked your 3 double trebles, and then the 4th being this chain 5, we're going to work a crisscross back over the next 6 stitches. That's the same crisscross that we worked in the very first section. Okay, there is my crisscross back, and now we're going to learn how to do the center crisscross increase over these next 3 stitches. Our swatch is about to get a little bit funky because we're going to do some increasing here in the middle of the row. All right, the first thing we're going to do is get ourselves set up for a triple treble. We're going to work a triple treble in this stitch here, skipping 2 stitches and working in that next stitch. So go ahead and yarn over 4, skip 2 stitches, and work your triple treble in that 3rd stitch. Now we're going to work in front of this triple treble here. and we're going to be working in this stitch. This would be like the center stitch of your shawl. We're going to work 3 double trebles in this center stitch in front of our triple treble. So kind of push it off to the back there so you can access this, and yarn over 3 times. This part is a little bit funky. So there's our first double treble in front of that triple treble. Now we need to do 2 more in the same stitch. One more. And if you're working the shawl, this center would become your new center stitch. Now there's one more stitch over here, and I haven't forgotten about him. We're going to work another triple treble in front of everything we've done here into this skip stitch. So go ahead and yarn over 4 times. Push everything out of the way so that you can get to this stitch right here in front. Make sure you keep your hook in front of everything you've just done and pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2 until you are back to a single stitch. All right, that is what our center crisscross increase should look like. You've got 1 triple treble hanging out here to the back. You've got 3 double trebles out of 1 stitch, and then you've got another triple treble coming across the front of everything. Since we're mimicking the shawl here, we're now going to work another set of crisscrosses, this time to the front, over the next 6 stitches. After your crisscross to the front, you should still have 2 half double crochets remaining. So let's do 2 double trebles to finish out this row. To finish off this last crisscross row that we've done, we're just going to work another half double crochet row. So chain 2, turn, and work a half double crochet in each stitch across, making sure that when you get to the very end, you make sure to go into that turning chain, chain 5. All right, I am here at the very end of this row, and I can't forget to go into the top of this turning chain, but I'm alternating my colors now, and it's time for me to switch back to this blue. So watch what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start my half double crochet into the top of that turning chain, and at the last minute, I'm going to add that blue back in. So yarn over, go into the top of that turning chain here, and pull up a loop. Now that I'm ready to close off that half double crochet, I'm going to grab both of these strands, yarn over, and pull through. Let's work one more half double crochet row to show what it's like to change back to our other skein. So I need to chain 2, and I'm going to do so with both yarns very loosely because I need to carry both colors up as far as I can. I'm going to turn around, and now it's time for me to go back to this original skein. So I'm just going to let go of that pink and let it fall off to the back, and I'm going to grab my blue, and now I can start my half double crochet row with my blue. I'm going to just work a regular half double crochet row because after this we are going to move on to the bobble border. Now it's time to do the final step in the shawl, and that is the bobble border. Now this is an optional part of the pattern, but it really is so much fun, and I want to add this bobble border onto everything. Now if you've been working the entire swatch with me and you did this center increase here, you should have 23 stitches. Even if you don't worry about it one bit. Let's just work the bobble border as far across as we can. The bobble border starts with 4 chains. Now we're going to work into the second chain from the hook. We're going to repeat the following. Yarn over, go into the second chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. We're going to do that 2 more times. Yarn over, go into the second chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. One more. Yarn over, go into the second chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. This is going to be our first cluster, and to close it off, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4 loops on the hook. Now we're going to work a second cluster to make this extra bobbly. So go ahead, do 2 chains, and then we're going to work another cluster into the top of this first one. We're going to go in right here where that bottom chain is in the top of the cluster. So yarn over, go into the top of the cluster, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then repeat that 2 more times. You should have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through all 4 loops to finish off the cluster. This part is super cool. We're going to fold this top cluster over and on top of the bottom cluster, and then we're going to slip stitch it to closed. So we're going to slip stitch it right here in the base of that bottom cluster. So go ahead and fold it over again, and then stick your hook into the base of the bottom cluster, yarn over and pull through both loops so that it's slip stitched closed. Now if you haven't already, let's get our crochet going in the correct direction. And we're going to finish off this repeat. Chain 2, then we're going to skip 2 stitches, the first stitch and the second stitch, and slip stitch in that next stitch here. Now we just repeat the entire thing. So begin with chain 4. In the second chain from the hook, we're going to work the following. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, 2 more times. Once we have 4 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 4 to close up that first cluster. Then chain 2. Now we're going to work another cluster in the top of the first one or the back of that bottom chain. Yarn over, go into the top of the cluster, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, 2 more times. When 4 loops are remaining, yarn over and pull through all 4 to close. Then we're going to fold our cluster in half, and we're going to slip stitch right there in the base of the bottom cluster. Now to finish it off, chain 2, skip 2 stitches, and slip stitch in that next stitch. Repeat the bobble stitch pattern until you run out of stitches. When you're all done with your bobbles, if you are keeping your swatch, you can go ahead and break your yarn and fasten off. If you're making the larger version of the Playtime Shawl pattern, I would highly recommend hanging onto this swatch. You are likely going to need it to finish your pattern. You have learned so much by making this swatch. Not only did we get a super accurate gauge, but you also learned how to do crisscrosses to the right, to the left, how to do the center crisscross. You learned how to carry your yarn on both the longer crisscross rows and the shorter half double crochet rows. and you learned how to do the bobble border. You made it all the way through the swatch and now you're ready to crochet your own Playtime shawl. If you'd like to find the pattern, you can just use the link below. It will take you straight to Ravelry. You can also check out other people's projects and see their color combinations and contrasting colors there. Happy crocheting!